And to take us through Lesotho's COVID-19 response, we're now joined via Zoom by our correspondent, Rapelang Radebe. Rapelang, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us and a warm welcome to the Globe.
Melanda, listen, Pierre, thanks to you.
Yeah, I suppose then that Prime Minister Majora's positive, bold stance on COVID-19 vaccinations has sown so much divisions, especially among the anti-vaccination brigade or anti-vaccination community. Just how much of an issue is it in Lesotho in terms of being forced to vaccinate or the mandatory vaccinations?
Indeed, it has sparked some contrasts when it comes to exchange of ideas. Well, Lesotho has generally been very receptive when it comes to issues of vaccine. It has led wide campaigns against measles, rubella, and others. So it has never really been against vaccines. But when the COVID-19 vaccine came in, it really split some into thinking a lot of things. But generally, I think it took up the vaccine quite well. But it was only, I think, a week ago when the Prime Minister addressed the nation in a mitigation strategy, trying to ramp up the vaccine process, that he said he's going to give people about 2 weeks for them to get ready to get vaccinated. Otherwise, some services will be limited to only those who are fully vaccinated. And some of them is the ability to sit down in a restaurant, the ability to join the sporting codes like football, soccer, the ability to join the big concerts which will be coming up, especially towards the festive season as it comes. And this really split to some and said, the last time we checked, vaccination was still a free option. And the question is, how are you going to administer that? How are you going to put it into place without really trampling upon people's rights? Where does my now right not to vaccinate or to exercise freedom of choice? And if now there will be limitations as to the kind of services that I can get or not get?
Yeah, the issue that you just raised now, how has the Prime Minister dealt with it in terms of, ensuring not to trample on people's right to choose to get vaccinated or not?
Yeah, look, we saw how the lockdowns were implemented, where to some extent the military were a little heavy-handed. And now the onus is now up to the people who will be running those facilities. If it is a restaurant, it will be up to those who run the restaurants. But if it is a concert, it will be up to the organizers to make sure that they get the proper information. The proof of vaccination will be entirely upon them. And if this is somebody who's running a business, the question is, how can you be sure that they will actually be in a position to turn people away because they are not vaccinated, when they have suffered for this long without their businesses actually taking place? You know, most of this entertainment-related activities, even the liquor stores, the right to sit in a restaurant, had been severely hampered due to the lockdowns. And the question is, will they really comply? If they don't comply, who will be there actually to do the follow-up that the people who are in that particular facility are fully vaccinated? So these are some of the questions as to the compliance is another part. Do you even have enough police to actually go and police private businesses? To what extent do you now remove them from ordinary crime enforcement to now policing people who are getting into an entertainment zone? So these are some of the questions. Another spark that came in was whether will he be as strict when it comes to the politicians who are holding mass rallies. You know, Lesotho will be going to elections next year, and now people are ramping up the rallies, going there in numbers, and he never said anything about those who will be attending those rallies to show proof of vaccination, those who are going to churches or other mass meetings. The question is, how do you apply the law? Where does it work? How do you make sure that there is balance and respecting the rights of people?
You know, so many unanswered questions there, Rapelang. But those who choose not to vaccinate and those who are against vaccinations, what are some of the issues that they are raising?
Yeah, I actually had an interesting conversation from those. There's still an understanding that the vaccination was hurried, it was not properly done. Others are simply saying this has become one big money-making racket scheme, and others are simply saying there is not enough information coming up as to whether the benefits of vaccination versus those who say the vaccination has caused some harm. Remember, Lesotho, I reported on a case of 5 people that were suspected to have died after vaccination, but later on reports came that they could have had complications, but really the vaccination could not have been the cause for their deaths. But others are downright arguments which to some extent make logic. I'll give you a simple example. Lesotho has neighboring bordering towns that cross inside and outside Lesotho into South Africa, that kind of interchange of movement. And you are still expected to have paid the 870 PCR test, which is relatively quite expensive if you have to do that like twice a month. This is something that has pushed other people even to go to illegal crossings, simply saying they cannot afford. And looking at the reduction rate of the COVID infections and say, why do people still insist on such expensive measures when we relatively have the data and understanding between the two towns? Why not, if you are vaccinated, just be allowed to cross over, maybe with some other protocols, but not this expensive that is being forced upon them? So these are some of the confusing questions that says it looks like science is applied in ways that people cannot comprehend.
You know, Rapelang, how much of a role does the myths, the misconceptions, the misinformation, disinformation, as it were, and fake news play in Lesotho's COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy? And does religion also play a role as well?
Look, I'll give it, because of free flow of information, relatively, access to information, it still remains individuals who are, some continue to say they don't have information, but relatively, there is available information. But there will be people, maybe due to their religious, especially the theories that this could have been a microchip embedded into you, a sign of the mark of the beast that will see force. You know, when you read the book of Revelations that says in the end of times, people will not be allowed in shops. And people are just translating some of these verses to suit their narratives and vehemently simply saying they will not be forced into vaccination. But if you look at the history of vaccination, from time, Lesotho has been very compliant, and they have seen good benefits when it comes to issues of vaccination. But yeah, sometimes people have too much access, I suppose, to information. Then they will start to read things that sort of tickle their thinking, to an extent that if you want to support a particular theory and you tend to read too many books that attempts to talk about what you think, it's quite possible that you might be influenced. But I really don't think. If you look at the vaccination rate of Lesotho, it literally shot straight up as the vaccines became available, as the donors make them available. The rate simply shot up. So you'll understand that while there are still some pockets of resistance, but generally, I think Lesotho have had enough information and understanding to see the benefits, especially if you look at the second wave that took quite a few lives unnecessarily. So people started to understand that COVID is a reality and they need to comply with the mitigation strategies that are at hand.
Just a couple of months ago, Rapelang, there were heightened concerns about COVID-19 cases going unnoticed or going unrecorded. What's the latest with regards to that?
That remains a big concern. We want to believe that there is a very high number of unregistered, undetected COVID-19. One would say maybe to some extent it could be an advantage such that what we think is a herd immunity is even higher than what we are thinking. There is one straightforward fact is that Lesotho has not really been affected, because if you look at the death rate, it's still hovering just over 300. So it says even if people have actually been infected with COVID-19, the recovery rate is so high that the rate of impact is not as bad. It's only recently that also they're considering opening up vaccination to the teenagers. But the uptake is pretty slow, I think, simply because people tend to agree or believe into something when they actually see the impact. Now that on an overall, the impact has not been that bad, but the truth is we have also lost some good friends. We have lost some very close people close to us. So it's still a sign that one cannot be complicit or take things for granted, that if maybe we don't know the type of strand that may be coming. People are already talking about the fourth wave, and you will never know who it will impact or how it will come in the fourth round. So the best argument or the best defense remains adhering to vaccination and nothing else.
All right, Rapelang, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for our update.
Thank you so much, man.
All right, that was correspondent in Lesotho, in Maseru, Rapelang Radebe, just giving us an update on Lesotho's COVID-19 response plan.